Hello, welcome my creative friends. I'm so glad you're here. It's Tracey back to share lots of tips and techniques as we create the shabby mixed media card together. You'll learn how to transform these lovely flowers into shabby beauties with paint, microbeads, and glitter, highlight texture on this fabulous butterfly with paint and wax, transform seam binding into a girly grunge bow, create these gorgeous gems with pearl drops, and add tattered edges to these beautiful layered papers. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you're new to my channel. To receive notifications of future videos, you can click on the bell. Let's start with this gorgeous butterfly. There will be several layers of color to build depth. We'll begin with a base coat of pink. I keep a few basic paints on hand so I can mix the colors needed for projects. Here's one of the new Tim Holtz colors, Kitsch Flamingo. This is a beautiful pink, but I'm looking for a paler tint, so added in quite a bit of white gesso to lighten it up. This butterfly has a lot of detail with some rather deep crevices. I thinned the paint with a few spritzes of water so it would flow nicely into the textured design. Brush on the paint, then use a dabbing motion to move it into all the nooks and crannies. Be sure to use an old or inexpensive brush for this, since dabbing can bend and damage the bristles. Now we're ready to highlight this amazing texture with 2 shades of gold. Start with Little Birdie's Golden Glaze Tinted Metallic Paint. Because there's so much detail, I feel like I have better control rubbing the paint on with my finger, but you could also use a light touch with a fan brush to apply the paint. I dab my finger into the paint, then rub most of it off. That way I'm applying a thin layer of paint that won't glob down into the crevices. Only the raised surface texture is colored. I've used the Wings of Beauty mold by Zuri Designs to create this stunning butterfly. I am blown away by the detail and designs in their molds. If you aren't familiar with Zuri, I have a link in the description below. I keep a dish of molded resin pieces that are ready to go for projects. If you would like to see my process for molding the resin, please let me know in the comments below and I'll be sure to include it in an upcoming video. The thin application of golden glaze paint dries quickly, so you can go right in and apply this rich gold metallic wax, which is a little darker. I want both shades of gold to be visible, so I'm applying it mostly to the edges for shading and depth. I find Little Birdie metallic products to be loaded with mica for great results. Just look at that gleaming shimmer. Let's transform this white ribbon into a lovely shabby chic bow. Mix shimmery sherbet metallic paint with white gesso and spritz generously with water. The colors don't need to be perfectly blended, as some variation in color across the bow would be nice. Drag the ribbon through the paint until it is completely covered. To crinkle the ribbon, scrunch it up and dry with the heat tool. Be careful not to get too close or keep the heat in one spot for too long, or you could melt the ribbon. I'm using the Ranger Heated Craft tool, which gently disperses the heat rather than concentrating it in one spot, so it's better for this kind of application, but any heat tool will work if used properly. Here I'm demonstrating how to tie a double loop bow. Hold your first 2 fingers apart the width you would like your bow to be. Leave a tail and wrap it around your fingers in a figure 8 pattern twice. Wrap the ends around the loop and tie them in a knot. Adjust the loops as needed. For a shabby chic effect, dry brush the bow with white gesso. Dip a dry fan brush into the gesso, swipe most of it off, then brush over the texture on the bow on all areas that will remain visible once it's adhered onto your project. I have a ginormous roll of white rayon seam binding that I color as needed for the project at hand. Normally I use spray mist, but didn't have one that was quite right, so I thought to myself, I wonder what will happen if I use paint. Why not? I've never tried this before, so had no clue if it would be workable, but I adore the results. The bow is a little stiffer than normal, but supple enough to tie into a beautiful bow and drape across the card. If an idea pops into your head, don't be afraid to try it, as long as you have enough supplies to start over again if it doesn't happen to work out. It's so rewarding to try something new and get such beautiful results. If you're new to my channel, you should know I simply adore gears, so I'm delighted to work with Little Birdie's Cogs and Wheels die set. This cog is cut from a piece of thin chipboard. A quick and easy way to add a gorgeous finish to chipboard is with heat embossing. I like to adhere the chipboard to a piece of scrap paper with repositionable tape. This helps it hold in place. Apply embossing medium with a dabber or embossing pad. The shabby pink embossing enamel I'm using is a mix of white and pink powder with a bit of superfine gold glitter. I like to give it a stir before covering the chipboard. Gently tap off the excess, then heat emboss. It peels off the paper nicely. I'm going to be totally transparent here. I'm not a big fan of pearl drop products, but thought they would be lovely on this card, so I pulled out my Little Birdie candy glazed pearl drops. I decided to form the pearls on a piece of plastic packaging rather than directly on the paper. As you watch me make them, you will see why. I'm not exactly even-handed with the application, so to get uniform pearls, I thought this would be best. I set them aside to dry, and to my surprise, they are more beautiful than I could have imagined. Rather than being opaque like a pearl, they are more like translucent gems and absolutely gorgeous. Do you have a medium or product that you've never cracked open to try? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you'll give it a try. You just might discover a new favorite. I adore creating with stunning Little Birdie flowers. They are gorgeous right out of the package, but since I'm going for a shabby chic look, I'm dry brushing them with white gesso. These flowers are from the Celebrate Life Rosalind set. As you can see, there are two shades of pink, a delicate pale shabby pink, and the other is a more coral shade. I adore the variety, but wanted more uniformity with the color on this card, so I'm being more heavy-handed than normal with the gesso. You might have seen this technique on previous videos, so if you decide to skip ahead, you might want to catch the end of this flower technique where I add more color to the flowers to get that uniformity I'm going for. Remember the kitsch flamingo paint used on the butterfly? I'm pulling it out again here. Brush it over any areas that are distinctively coral rather than shabby pink. If needed, go back in and add touches of white along the edges. This 5x7 inch card uses 5 layers, showcasing the gorgeous Shabby Chic Bouquet and Woodland Stories collections. Here's a list of the dimensions for each layer. The layer just below the sentiment card is this creamy wood grain paper. I'm adding second and third generation stamping for visual texture. This Ledger script stamp from Tim Holtz is the perfect size for the paper. I ink it up with ground espresso archival ink, then stamp it twice on the scrap paper. I lay it inked side up and lay the paper on the stamp and press down with my fingers to get a good impression. Next, ink up this floral image from Tim's Flower Shop set. Press it onto the scrap paper once this time, and then stamp off the right edge of the paper. Distress the edges of all 5 layers. I'm using a paper distressor, but you could use the edge of your scissors to get the same effect. Repeat for all 5 layers. Ink the edges for definition. To keep with the shabby look, I use old paper, which is one of my lighter brown inks. Because there is such a small margin of each paper showing, I'm only inking the frayed areas of the edges so the designs will show up nicely. Glue the layers together. I'm only adhering the centers to leave room at the edges to tuck in thin paper embellishments. If you want to add thicker items to your layers, add foam tape or chipboard to add dimension and room for the embellishments. You'll notice that this stamped layer is as wide as the layer below it. When I taped this initially, I accidentally took a photo instead of shooting video of the stamping section and miscut the piece I used when doing take 2. No problem, I just line it up correctly on the right, where it should be, and the wonky left side will be covered with lace and embellishments, so it won't be seen in the final project. A couple thin lines of silicone glue will hold the lace in place nicely. This shabby scrap of lace in my stash happened to be the perfect size. I trimmed off the edges a little shorter than the paper, then frayed them so they ended up going to the end of the card. I trimmed the stray threads that were too long. This scroll is fussy cut from the Shabby Chic Bouquet image sheet. I meant to place it on the bottom of the sentiment card, so I lifted the lace to glue it down. Now you can see my creative process as I arrange these embellishments. I like to place the larger items first, then work out from the center with gradually smaller elements. Once I have a general placement for everything, I go back and adhere the elements. You'll probably notice that while I keep the general arrangement, I do change things around a little bit. One of the things that's important to me as I design this card is to be able to fully read the sentiment, so I'm careful not to cover it up. I want the loops of this bow to hang down so they don't cover the sentiment. I push the loops together as I apply the glue to hold them in place. Dots of glue are added to hold the tail of the bow in place. I realized that the gear I had tucked into the layers would be hidden, so I moved it up below the butterfly. When adhering something that's tucked underneath a flower or into a layer, I try to add adhesive to the part that will be covered up. That way I don't need to worry about getting the glue on just right so that it won't show, especially on more intricate pieces like this gear. It's time to add the pearl drops. You can see here how translucent and gem-like these gorgeous drops are. They peel off the plastic packaging easily. To adhere, add a drop of silicone glue, which dries perfectly clear, to the back of the gem, then dab it onto the packaging to remove any excess before placing it onto the card. It might look like I'm fussing a lot with this paper flower, but I decided to leave this in the video. Sometimes it helps to look at things from several perspectives before deciding the best placement. Taking the time to find the right balance is an important part of the creative process. I ended up creating 2 gears and decided to use them both. Another case of snapping a photo rather than taping video. It felt like the card needed a little something below the pearl drops, and this fussy cut leaf sprig was just perfect. Since it's so delicate, I used Tombow glue, which stays tacky when dry. After applying the glue, it's set aside to dry as I continue working. The beautiful shabby butterfly inspired me to add a touch of gold to the flowers and bow. I dab a foam makeup wedge into the golden glaze paint, then dab most of it off before applying it to the flowers and crinkled bow for a lovely golden glow. I generally add a bit of beaded or glittered texture at the end. This time we're changing things up a little. Instead of adding the texture around the flowers, it's going directly on them. Randomly brush the flowers with matte gel medium, then sprinkle on tiny white gold microbeads along with bronze and champagne glass glitter to add this texture. Have you ever wondered why I put my microbeads and glitter in these small cups? I found that the tall, slender containers they come in are all too easy to knock over. As you may already know, it's not too much fun to pick them all up. These cups are more stable and I haven't knocked one over yet. Place the leafy sprig and the card front is complete. To adhere the card to the base, I edge it with lined double-sided tape and squeeze out silicone glue into the center. The liquid glue allows me to adjust the placement, and once dry, I go back and remove the paper liner so the edges are secure. Just look at all the beautiful dimension with these layers and fabulous little birdie flowers. You can find supplies used for this video in the description below. Here are video links with more techniques for your mixed media creations. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day. I'll be back soon with another video.